The hall was cold, despite the fire burning low in the hearth. Mira stood at the center of the stone floor, her hands folded before her, her spine straight, though her legs trembled beneath the weight of every gaze. She had learned long ago to hold her body still when the world turned sharp around her. She had learned to breathe through humiliation. Alpha Kaelen Thorne watched her from the dais, his dark eyes unreadable, his posture carved from authority and distance. The gathered court whispered behind gloved hands, their voices a hiss of silk and judgment. She did not look at them, she looked only at him. He had summoned her here. He had called her forward and asked her name, and when she gave it, he had asked her station. She told him the truth. She was no one now. She carried no pack, no bond, no home. "Then you wear no mark," he said, his voice calm and edged with something she could not name. She had hesitated. Only for a breath. But it was enough. "Show us," he said. "Bare your shoulder before the court." The hall went silent. Mira felt the words settle into her chest like stones. She knew what he wanted. Proof. Evidence that she was unclaimed, unwanted, free to be turned away or taken in at his discretion. It was the way of things. An Omega without a mark was vulnerable, easily dismissed. She had been dismissed before. But this time it would cost her more than pride. She lifted her hand to the edge of her sleeve. Her fingers were steady. She had survived worse than this. She pulled the fabric down slowly, baring her shoulder to the firelight and the cold air and the eyes that would not look away. The crest was there. It had always been there, burned into her skin years ago when her life had still held the shape of a promise. The lines were clean, deliberate, unmistakable. A royal seal, the mark of the crown prince, given in ceremony and sealed with vows she had spoken in a chapel filled with light. She had believed in those vows once. She had believed in the man who gave them. Kaelen rose from his seat. The movement was sudden, too fast, and she saw the shock ripple through his frame before he could hide it. He stepped down from the dais, his boots loud against the stone, and crossed the space between them with the kind of urgency that made her heart stutter. He stopped just short of touching her, his gaze locked on the crest, on the curl of the sigil and the faint scar tissue that framed it. She watched his jaw tighten, his breath catch, his hand lift and fall again as though he did not trust himself to reach for her. "Cover yourself," he said quietly. She pulled the sleeve back into place. Her fingers shook now. Just a little. Kaelen turned to face the court, his shoulders squared, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Leave us." No one moved at first. The council members exchanged glances. The guards shifted their weight. A woman near the back leaned toward her companion and whispered something Mira could not hear. "Now," Kaelen said. The hall emptied in a slow, reluctant wave. Boots scraped. Doors opened and closed. The fire crackled in the silence that followed, and Mira stood alone with the Alpha, who had just stripped her dignity in front of witnesses and then sent them all away. She did not know which was worse. Kaelen turned back to her. His face was unreadable again, but his voice had changed. It was softer now, careful. "I did not know," he said. She said nothing. "I did not know who you were." He took a breath. "I would not have asked that of you if I had known." "Would it have mattered?" she asked. Her voice came out steady. She was proud of that. He hesitated. "Yes, because of the mark, because of what it means." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the regret there. It surprised her. She had expected anger or suspicion, or the cold practicality of a man protecting his territory. She had not expected this. "It means nothing anymore," she said. "The man who gave it to me is dead." "I know." "Then you know I have no claim, no right to stand here wearing it." That is not true. She shook her head. I was cast out. The royal house wanted nothing to do with me after he died. They said I was a reminder of grief. They said I should have been buried with him. She paused. Some days I think they were right. Kaelen's expression tightened. Do not say that. Why not? It is the truth. It is cruelty. It is what I have lived with. He was quiet for a moment. Then he stepped closer, just one step, and his voice dropped lower. Will you stay? She blinked. What? Here, tonight. Longer, if you will allow it. He hesitated. I wronged you. I see that now. Let me offer you sanctuary while I make it right. You cannot make this right. Perhaps not, but I can try. She studied his face, the strong line of his jaw, the steadiness in his gaze. He was not pleading. He was asking. There was a difference. Why? She said. Because you deserve better than what I just did to you. And because... He trailed off, then met her eyes again. Because no one should carry what you carry alone. Something in her chest cracked. Just a little. Just enough to let a sliver of warmth through the cold. She nodded once. I will stay. Relief softened the edges of his expression. Thank you. But I do not trust you yet. I understand. And I do not forgive easily. I would not ask you to. She pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, covering the mark again, hiding it from sight, though they both knew it was there. It would always be there. Kaelen gestured toward the side door. There are rooms in the east wing, warm, private. I will have food brought to you. I can serve myself. I know, but tonight, let someone else care for you. She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him she needed no one. But the truth was, she was tired. So tired. And the offer of warmth and rest, and a door she could close behind her was more than she had hoped for when she walked into this hall. All right, she said quietly. He led her through the corridor in silence. The stone walls were lined with tapestries that muffled the sound of their footsteps. She could hear her own breathing, steady and careful, and the faint crackle of torches in their sconces. When they reached the door, he stopped and turned to face her. If you need anything, send word. I will come. Why would you do that? Because you are under my protection now. He paused. And because I owe you more than an apology. She looked up at him. His face was shadowed by the low light, but his eyes were clear, honest. Good night, Mira, he said. Good night. He left her there, standing in the doorway, her hand on the latch. She watched him walk back down the corridor until he disappeared around the corner. Then she stepped inside and closed the door. The room was warm. A fire burned in the hearth. There was a bed with clean linens and a chair by the window. It was more than she had known in a long time. She sat on the edge of the bed and touched her shoulder through the fabric. The mark was still there. It always would be. But tonight, for the first time in months, she was not afraid. Mira woke to sunlight falling through the narrow window in slanted bars across the stone floor. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then the warmth of the room settled over her, and she remembered. The hall. The Alpha. The way he had looked at her when he saw the mark. She sat up slowly and touched her shoulder again. The crest was raised beneath her fingertips, the lines of it burned deep into her skin. It had been a promise once, a symbol of love and future and belonging. Now it was only a scar that told a story no one wanted to hear. She rose and crossed to the window. The courtyard below was quiet. A few servants moved between the buildings, their heads bent against the morning chill. Beyond the walls, she could see the hills rolling away into mist. It was a lonely landscape. She understood it well. There was a soft knock at the door. She tensed. Her hand went to the dagger at her waist before she remembered she had left it on the table the night before. She had not expected to need it here. Not yet. "Come in," she said. The door opened, and a young woman entered carrying a tray. She had kind eyes and a careful smile. "Good morning. Lord Kaelen asked me to bring you breakfast." Mira nodded. "Thank you." The woman set the tray on the table by the window. Bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a cup of something warm that smelled like herbs and honey. Simple food. Honest food. The kind that filled the belly without pretense. "Is there anything else you need?" the woman asked. "No, this is enough." The woman hesitated at the door. "If I may say, it is good that you are here. Lord Kaelen does not often offer sanctuary, but when he does, he means it." Mira looked at her. "You trust him." "I do. He has been fair to all of us. He does not ask more than we can give." She paused. "And he does not forget kindness." She left before Mira could reply. Mira sat at the table and ate slowly. The bread was fresh, the cheese soft, the tea warmed her from the inside out. She had grown used to cold meals and hunger that came and went with the seasons. This felt strange, almost too much. When she finished, she dressed and wrapped her cloak around her shoulders, covering the mark again. She did not know what the day would bring. She did not know if Kaelen would summon her or leave her in peace. Either way, she would be ready. She opened the door and stepped into the corridor. It was quieter now than it had been the night before. The torches had burned low. The air smelled faintly of smoke and old stone. She walked slowly, her footsteps soft on the worn floor. She was not trying to hide. She simply did not want to draw attention. She found her way back to the main hall. It was empty now. The benches had been cleared. The fire in the hearth had been banked to embers. She stood in the center of the room and looked up at the high ceiling. This was where he had ordered her to strip, where the court had watched her, where everything had changed. She touched her shoulder again through the fabric. "You are awake." She turned. Kaelen stood in the doorway, his expression calm but watchful. He was dressed simply today. No heavy cloak or ceremonial blade, just a tunic and trousers and boots worn soft with use. He looked more like a man than a lord. "I am," she said. He stepped into the hall and closed the door behind him. "Did you sleep well?" "Well enough." "I am glad." He crossed the room slowly, giving her space. "I wanted to speak with you, if you are willing." She nodded. "I am listening." He stopped a few paces away. "I owe you more than an apology. I owe you an explanation." "You owe me nothing," she said quietly. "I disagree." He looked at her steadily. "What I did yesterday was wrong. I acted without knowing who you were. I treated you as though you had no worth. I shamed you before my people." "You did. I cannot undo that, but I can tell you why." He paused. "There have been false claims before. Omegas who came seeking protection or favor, who lied about their lineage or their bonds. I grew tired of deception, so I demanded proof." He shook his head. "But I should have asked. I should have given you the chance to speak before I made assumptions." She studied him. His voice was steady, his eyes clear. There was no deflection in him, no attempt to soften his mistake. "Why should I believe you now?" she asked. "Because I am telling you the truth. And because I know what it is to be judged without being heard." He took a breath. "My father was the same. He demanded proof of everything: loyalty, strength, worth. He trusted no one. And it made him cruel." His voice softened. "I swore I would not become him. But yesterday I did." Mira felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. She knew what it was to carry the weight of someone else's choices, to fear becoming what you hated. "The mark on your shoulder," he said carefully. "It belonged to Prince Davrin." She flinched at the name. She had not heard it spoken aloud in so long. It felt like a blade pressed to old wounds. "Yes," she said, "you were promised to him." "I was." "And when he died?" "I was cast out." Her voice was flat, emotionless. She had told this story too many times in her own mind. She would not let it break her again. The king said the bond was void, that I had no claim, that the mark meant nothing without the prince to honor it. She pulled her cloak tighter. "So I left, and I have been alone ever since." Kaelen's jaw tightened. "That was wrong." "It was the law. The law can be cruel." She looked at him. "You are an alpha. You make the law here." "I do, and I will not cast you out." His voice was firm, certain. "You are welcome here for as long as you wish to stay. No conditions, no expectations." She wanted to believe him, but belief was dangerous. It made you soft. It made you hope. And hope had only ever hurt her. "Why?" she asked. "Why does it matter to you what happens to me?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you loved him, and you lost him, and no one should be punished for grief." Her throat tightened. She turned away so he would not see her face. "I did love him. I know. He was kind. He made me laugh. He promised me a future." Her voice cracked. And then he was gone. Kaelen did not move closer. He did not try to comfort her. He simply stood there and let her speak. "I thought the mark would protect me," she said. "I thought it would mean something. But all it did was remind everyone of what I lost and what I could never have again." "It still means something," Kaelen said quietly. "It means you were loved, and that you are strong enough to carry that love even when it hurts." She turned back to him. His eyes were steady, warm. There was no pity in them, only understanding. "I do not know how to trust again," she admitted. "Then do not trust me yet. Just stay, let yourself rest, and we will see what comes." She nodded slowly. "All right, thank you." She pulled her cloak around her shoulders and walked past him toward the door. But before she left, she paused and looked back. "Kaelen." He turned. "If you hurt me again, I will leave, and I will not come back." "I understand." She believed him. Just a little. Just enough. Mira woke the next morning to soft light, filtering through the curtains of the small room Kaelen had given her. The bed was warm. The blankets were clean. She had not slept in a real bed for months. She sat up slowly and pressed her fingers to her shoulder. The mark still ached. It always did. But the humiliation from the day before burned deeper than any physical pain. She rose and dressed in the simple clothes that had been left folded on a chair. They were plain but well made. Someone had been kind enough to think of her needs. She did not know who. She did not know if it mattered. When she opened the door, she found a tray on the floor outside. Bread, cheese, a small pot of honey, and a cup of tea that was still warm. She picked it up and brought it inside. She ate slowly, carefully. She had learned not to rush. Food was precious when you had none. When she finished, she ventured out into the hall. The corridors were quiet. She passed a few servants who nodded politely but did not stare. That was something. She had grown used to stares. She found her way to a small courtyard at the back of the keep. It was sheltered from the wind and filled with late autumn flowers. The air was cool but not cold. She stood there for a while and let herself breathe. "You found it." She turned. Kaelen stood at the entrance to the courtyard. He was dressed simply today. No formal cloak. No heavy boots. Just a dark tunic and trousers. He looked less like an alpha lord and more like a man who had not slept well. "I did," she said. He stepped into the courtyard but kept his distance. "I hoped you would. It is my mother's garden. She tended it herself before she passed." Mira looked around again. The care was evident in every stone and stem. "It is beautiful." She believed that even in hard seasons there should be something soft to look at. Mira nodded. She understood that. Kaelen cleared his throat. "I wanted to speak with you, if you are willing." She turned to face him fully. "All right." He took a breath. "I owe you more than an apology. What I did yesterday was unforgivable. I humiliated you. I made you vulnerable in front of a crowd of strangers. I did not know who you were, but that does not excuse it." She watched him carefully. His voice was steady, but there was regret in his eyes. "Real regret." "You thought I was lying," she said. "I did, and I was wrong." "Why did you think that?" He hesitated. "Because I have been lied to before, by others who came to this hall seeking favor or protection. I have learned to be cautious. Too cautious, perhaps. And so you stripped me in front of your court to prove a point." He flinched. "Yes, and I am ashamed of it." She folded her arms. "Shame does not undo what was done." "No, it does not." They stood in silence for a moment. The wind stirred the flowers between them. "I do not know what you want from me," Mira said quietly. "You say I am welcome here. You say you will not cast me out. But I do not understand why you care." Kaelen met her gaze. "Because you deserved better. Because the mark on your shoulder should have protected you, and instead it made you a target. Because I have spent my life trying to lead with fairness, and yesterday I failed." She wanted to argue, to push him away, but his honesty stilled her tongue. "I will not ask you to forgive me," he continued. "I do not expect that, but I would like the chance to prove that I am not the man you saw yesterday. And if I decide you are, then you leave. And I do not stop you." She studied his face. There was no demand in it, no expectation, just quiet resolve. "You could have sent me away this morning," she said. "Your counsel would have been grateful. It would have been easier." "Easier does not mean right." She looked down at the stones beneath her feet. "I have been sent away so many times I stopped counting. I do not know if I can believe that this time is different." "Then do not believe it yet. Just stay. Give me the chance to show you." She lifted her eyes to his. "Why does it matter so much to you?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I know what it is to be alone, and I would not wish that on anyone." Something in his voice told her he was not speaking of leadership. He was speaking of something deeper, something personal. "You are an alpha," she said. "You have a hall full of people who serve you. How can you be alone?" Service is not the same as companionship. Duty is not the same as connection. He looked away. I have spent years making decisions for others, but there is no one who truly knows me. No one I can simply be with. Mira felt a strange pull in her chest. She knew that loneliness. She had lived it. I am not asking you to fill that space, he said quickly. I am only telling you that I understand what it feels like to carry something heavy and have no one to share it with. She nodded slowly. I understand that too. He turned back to her. Then perhaps we can simply share this space. Without expectation, without pressure. Just two people who have been alone for too long. She wanted to say no. She wanted to protect herself. But she was tired of running. Tired of walls. All right, she said. I will stay for now. Relief flickered across his face. Thank you. But if you ever humiliate me again, you will leave, I know, and I will not blame you. She believed him. Just a little more than yesterday. He gestured toward the path that led back into the hall. Will you join me for the midday meal? Nothing formal, just food and conversation. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. They walked back together in silence. It was not uncomfortable. It was simply quiet. And for the first time in a long time, Mira felt like she could breathe without fear. When they reached the dining hall, Kaelen led her to a small table near the hearth. It was away from the main gathering, private but not hidden. He poured her a cup of cider and set it in front of her. My cook makes this herself. It is the best in the region. Mira took a sip. It was warm and sweet, and tasted of apples and cinnamon. It is good. He smiled. It was a small smile, but it softened his face. I am glad. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Mira found herself watching him. He was careful with his movements. Deliberate. He did not crowd her space or demand her attention. What will your council say? She asked after a while. About me staying. They will say what they always say. That I am too lenient. That I should be more cautious. And you do not care? I care. But I do not let fear make my decisions. She set down her cup. The mark makes me dangerous to you. Politically. Perhaps. But sending you away would make me someone I do not wish to be. She looked at him for a long moment. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone harder. Someone who would not look back after making a choice. I used to be that way, he admitted, but it made me cold, and I did not like who I was becoming. So you changed. I am trying to. She nodded. That is more than most would do. He met her eyes. You deserve more than most would give. Her breath caught. She did not know what to say, so she simply sat with him and let herself rest. Just a little. The days that followed carried a rhythm Mira had not known in years, a rhythm of quiet mornings and measured conversations, of meals shared without expectation, and evenings spent in rooms that no longer felt like traps. Kaelen did not press her. He did not ask for gratitude or confessions. He simply made space for her and let her fill it at her own pace. She woke each morning in a room that overlooked the eastern courtyard. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows and warmed the stone floor beneath her feet. A basin of fresh water always waited on the table. Clean clothes laid out on the chair. Someone tended to these things without fanfare, without intrusion. She learned it was Kaelen who gave the orders. He made certain she had everything she needed. Soft blankets when the nights grew cold, tea that settled her restless stomach, books from his personal collection when she mentioned she missed reading. He asked nothing in return. At first she did not trust it. She waited for the demand, the expectation, the moment when his kindness would turn into leverage. But it did not come. Instead, he offered her companionship that felt careful and genuine. He invited her to walk the gardens when the weather was fair. He sat with her by the fire in the evenings and spoke of small things: the harvest, the changing season, the way the light shifted over the hills at dusk. He listened when she spoke, and he did not fill the silence when she needed it. Slowly she began to let her guard down, just a little. One afternoon she found him in the library sorting through a stack of old maps. He glanced up when she entered and smiled. "Looking for something?" he asked. "Just wandering," she admitted. "I have never been good at sitting still for long." "Neither have I." He gestured to the chair across from him. "You are welcome to wander here if you like. Or sit. Whichever suits you." She moved closer and looked down at the maps spread across the table. They were beautifully drawn, detailed. Some were so old the edges had begun to fray. "What are you searching for?" she asked. "Nothing in particular. I like looking at them, seeing how the borders have changed over time, how places were named and renamed." She traced a finger along one of the rivers marked in faded ink. "I used to study maps like these. Before—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Kaelen's voice was soft. "Before everything changed." "Yes." He set down the map he was holding and leaned back in his chair. "Do you miss it? That life?" She considered the question. "I miss the version of myself who believed in it, who thought the future was certain." "And now?" "Now I know better." He nodded slowly. "I think we all reach that moment eventually, when certainty falls away and we are left standing in the middle of something we did not choose." She looked at him. Really looked at him. There was something in his expression that told her he understood. Not just in theory, but from lived experience. "What did you lose?" she asked quietly. He was silent for a moment. Then he spoke. "My brother. 5 years ago. He was my closest friend, my advisor, the person who kept me grounded when duty felt too heavy. How did he—" "Illness. It came quickly. He was gone within a season." "I am sorry." "So am I." He met her eyes. "I think grief makes us cautious. We learn to protect ourselves by not hoping too much, not letting anyone too close." She felt the truth of his words settle in her chest. "Yes. But it also makes us lonely." She looked away. "Loneliness is safer." "Is it?" His voice was gentle, not challenging, just curious. She did not answer right away. She traced the edge of the map again and let herself think. Really think. "I do not know anymore," she admitted. He rose from his chair and moved to stand beside her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the steadiness. "You do not have to know yet," he said. "You are allowed to take your time." She glanced up at him. "You are very patient." "Only with things that matter." Her breath caught. She did not know what to say to that. So she said nothing. They stood together in the quiet library for a long moment. Then Kaelen stepped back and gave her space again. "Will you join me for supper tonight?" he asked. "I thought we might eat in the smaller hall." It is quieter there." "Yes," she said. "I would like that." He smiled. It was a small smile, but it reached his eyes. "Good." That evening she dressed with more care than usual. She was not sure why. Perhaps because she wanted to. Perhaps because for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Just a little. When she entered the smaller hall, Kaelen was already there. He had set the table himself. 2 places, candles burning softly between them, the fire crackling low in the hearth. He stood when she entered and pulled out her chair. "You look well," he said simply. "Thank you." They ate slowly. The food was simple but good. Roasted vegetables and fresh bread, and a stew that tasted of herbs and warmth. Kaelen spoke of his day. A meeting with the steward. A dispute over grazing land that had been settled peacefully. Small things. But he spoke of them with care, as if they mattered. And Mira realized they did. She found herself speaking, too, about the book she had been reading, about the way the light looked in the courtyard that morning, about the cat that had wandered into her room and curled up on the windowsill. He listened. He asked questions. He did not rush her or interrupt. It felt easy, natural, like something she had forgotten she knew how to do. After the meal, they sat by the fire. Kaelen poured her a cup of wine and settled into the chair across from her. "May I ask you something?" he said after a while. "Yes." "The prince you were promised to. Did you love him?" Her chest tightened. She had not expected the question, but she did not shy away from it. "I did," she said quietly. "Very much." "Tell me about him, if you wish." She looked into the fire and let herself remember. He was kind, thoughtful. He liked music and poetry. He used to read to me in the evenings. We would sit together and he would choose passages he thought I would like. He sounds gentle. He was. Too gentle for the weight he carried. I think it wore on him. And when he died, I was cast out. The court did not know what to do with me. I was marked but unbonded. A reminder of something lost, so they sent me away. That must have been unbearable. It was. She looked at him. But I survived it. And now, I am here. He held her gaze. I am glad you are. She felt something stir in her chest. Something fragile and unfamiliar. Something that felt almost like hope. "So am I," she said softly. They sat together in the firelight. The silence between them was warm, comfortable, safe. And for the first time since the day the prince had died, Mira let herself believe that maybe she could begin again. That maybe loneliness was not the only option left to her. Kaelen did not promise her anything. He did not offer her forever or speak of fate. He simply offered her now. Today. This moment by the fire. And somehow that felt like enough. The next morning brought frost to the windows and mist that clung low to the ground. Mira woke to the soft light of dawn and the quiet hum of the hall beginning its day. She dressed slowly, her hands steady, her mind calm in a way it had not been for a long time. When she came downstairs, Kaelen was already in the hall. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression eased, as if her presence had answered a question he had not spoken aloud. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning." He gestured toward the table. "Will you join me?" She nodded and took the seat across from him. Breakfast was simple. Bread and honey and tea. that steamed gently in the cool air. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kaelen spoke. "I thought we might walk today, if you would like." "Walk where?" "There is a path that leads through the forest. It is quiet, peaceful. I go there when I need to think." She considered it. "I would like that." He smiled, just a small lift at the corner of his mouth, but it warmed her nonetheless. They set out after the meal. The air was cold but not unpleasant. The path wound through tall trees whose branches hung low and still. The ground was soft with fallen leaves, and the only sound was the crunch of their footsteps and the occasional call of a bird high above. Mira pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. Kaelen walked beside her, his pace unhurried, his hands tucked into his coat. He did not try to fill the silence with idle talk. He simply walked with her, and she was grateful for it. After a while, they came to a clearing. A small stream ran through it, narrow and clear, its surface catching the light. Kaelen stopped and looked out over the water. "I come here when things feel too heavy," he said quietly, "when the weight of decision-making and duty begins to press too hard. It helps to be somewhere that does not ask anything of me." Mira stepped closer to the stream and knelt beside it. She dipped her fingers into the water. It was cold, sharp, real. "I used to have a place like this," she said. "A garden near the palace. There was a bench beneath an old oak tree. I would sit there when I needed to be alone." "Do you miss it?" "Sometimes. But I think I miss the person I was then more than the place itself." He came to stand beside her. "Who were you then?" She rose and looked at him. His eyes were steady, patient. He was not asking out of curiosity alone. He wanted to know her, truly know her. "I was hopeful," she said. "I believed in the future. I thought I knew what my life would be. And then it all fell apart. And now? Now I do not know what I believe. I am still learning how to hope again." He reached out slowly, as if giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His touch was warm, gentle, grounding. "Then we will learn together," he said. Her breath caught. She looked down at their joined hands and felt something inside her soften, something she had kept locked and guarded for so long. "You do not have to do this," she said quietly. "You do not have to offer me kindness just because you feel guilty." "I do not offer it out of guilt," he said. "I offer it because I want to, because I see you, Mira, and I want to know you. Not the mark on your shoulder, not the title you carried, just you." Her throat tightened. Tears prickled at the edges of her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She squeezed his hand instead. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Of what?" "Of hoping again, of letting myself believe that something good could come from all of this. I have lost so much already. I do not know if I can survive losing again." "You do not have to promise me anything," he said. "You do not have to decide today or tomorrow or even next week. All I ask is that you let me be here. Let me show you that not all touch is meant to hurt. Not all closeness ends in loss." She looked up at him. His face was open, honest. There was no demand in his gaze. Only patience. Only care. "I do not know how to do this," she said. "Neither do I," he admitted. "But I think we can try. Together." She nodded slowly. Together. They stood there by the stream for a long while, his hand still holding hers, the cold air soft against their faces, the world around them quiet and still. Eventually they began to walk again. This time, side by side. closer than before. And Mira felt something she had not felt in years. Not hope, not yet, but the possibility of it. A small ember that might one day become warmth. When they returned to the hall, the afternoon was already beginning to fade. Kaelen walked her to her room and paused at the door. "Thank you for today," he said. "Thank you for asking me." He hesitated. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so simple, so tender, it made her heart ache. "Rest well, Mira." "You too." He turned and walked away. She watched him go, her hand pressed to the place where his fingers had brushed her cheek. That evening she sat by the window in her room and looked out at the darkening sky. The stars were beginning to appear, faint and distant, but steady. She thought of the prince she had loved, of the life she had thought she would have, and for the first time she did not feel crushed by the memory. She felt sad, yes. She felt the weight of loss. But she also felt something else, something new and fragile and frighteningly real. She felt the quiet stirring of a heart that was beginning to heal. And as the night deepened around her, she allowed herself to imagine a future that was not shaped by grief. A future that held warmth and companionship and maybe even love. She did not know if it would come to pass. She did not know if she was strong enough to reach for it. But she knew one thing with certainty. She was no longer alone. And that was enough. The morning brought frost to the windows and tension to the hall. Mira woke to the sound of raised voices echoing from somewhere below. She dressed quickly and stepped into the corridor, her heart already uneasy. A servant passed and offered a small, worried smile. "The council is meeting with Lord Kaelen," she said quietly. "They have been at it since dawn." Mira nodded her thanks and made her way down the stairs. She did not intend to eavesdrop, but the voices grew louder as she approached the main chamber. The door was half open. She stopped just outside, her pulse quickening. "You cannot keep her here indefinitely," a man's voice said, sharp, insistent. "The crown will hear of it. They will ask questions. Questions you cannot afford to answer." "She is under my protection," Kaelen replied. His tone was calm but firm. "That is all the answer they need." "Protection?" Another voice. Older, wearier. "She carries the mark of the late prince. She is a reminder of a claim that was never fulfilled, a promise that died with him. The crown will not see her as your guest. They will see her as a threat." "She is no threat," Kaelen said. "She is a woman who has been wronged, who has lost everything. I will not add to her suffering by casting her out." "Then you risk your own standing," the first man said. "Your alliances, your future. For what? Sentiment? Pity?" There was a pause. Mira held her breath. When Kaelen spoke again, his voice was quieter, but there was steel beneath the softness. "For what is right," he said. "I will not turn her away because it is easier. I will not pretend she does not deserve dignity. If the crown has questions, they may ask me directly." But Mira stays. "You are making a mistake." "Perhaps," Kaelen said, "but it is mine to make." The silence that followed was heavy. Mira stepped back from the door, her chest tight. She had known this would come, known that her presence here would cause trouble. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real, made it sharp. She turned and walked quickly back toward the stairs. She did not want to be found lingering, did not want him to think she had been listening. But her thoughts were racing. She had no right to stay if it would cost him so much. No right to let him bear the weight of her past. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard footsteps behind her. "Mira," She stopped, turned. Kaelen stood at the base of the stairs, his expression weary but steady. "You heard," he said. It was not a question. She nodded. "I did." He climbed the stairs slowly until he stood one step below her. His eyes searched hers. "I meant what I said." "I know." Her voice was soft. "But I do not want to be the reason you lose everything." "You are not," he said. "My choices are my own, and I choose to stand by what I said." "They are right, though," she said. "The Crown will ask questions. They will see me as a problem, a complication." "Let them." She shook her head. "Kaelen, you do not have to do this." "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." He reached out and took her hand. His touch was warm, steady. "You have been cast aside too many times, Mira, by people who should have protected you. I will not be one of them." Her throat tightened. "I am not worth this fight." "You are," he said, "and I will not hear you say otherwise." She looked down at their joined hands. The simplicity of it. The strength. "What if they take everything from you? Then I will still have done the right thing." He squeezed her hand gently. "I would rather lose their favor than lose my honor." She met his gaze. There was no hesitation in his eyes. No doubt. Only certainty, and something deeper. Something that made her heart ache. "You are a fool," she whispered. "Perhaps." A faint smile touched his lips. "But I am a fool who will not abandon you." She felt something shift inside her. A wall she had held so carefully beginning to crack. Not all the way. Not yet. But enough to let a little light through. "Thank you," she said. He lifted her hand and pressed it gently between both of his. "You do not have to thank me for this." "I do," she said, "because no one else would have done it." They stood there on the stairs for a long moment. The hall around them quiet now, the frost on the windows softening as the sun climbed higher. Eventually, he released her hand and stepped back. "Come," he said. "Let us have breakfast. I think we have both earned it." She followed him down the stairs and into the dining hall. The servants were already setting out bread and warm milk and honey. Kaelen pulled out a chair for her, and she sat, still feeling the echo of his words in her chest. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then she looked up at him. "What will you tell them? The Crown, I mean, if they come asking?" "The truth," he said simply. "That you are my guest, that you have done nothing wrong, that I will not cast you out to satisfy their fear." "And if they demand it?" He set down his cup and met her eyes. "Then I will refuse." She studied him, his steady gaze, the quiet strength in his posture. "You would risk everything for someone you barely know." "I know enough," he said. "I know you have been hurt. I know you have survived more than most could bear, and I know that you deserve safety. That is enough." She felt the tightness in her throat return. "I do not understand you." "You do not have to," he said gently. "You only have to trust that I mean what I say." She looked down at her plate, at the simple food laid out before her, at the warmth of the fire and the hearth nearby. All of it offered freely, without condition. "I am trying," she said quietly. "I know." His voice was soft. "And that is enough." They finished their meal in silence. But it was not an empty silence. It was full of things unspoken, of trust being built word by word, gesture by gesture. When they rose from the table, Kaelen walked with her to the window that overlooked the courtyard. The frost was melting now, leaving the stones damp and dark. "I want you to know something," he said. She turned to him. "What?" "I do not regret this," he said. "Whatever comes next, I do not regret standing for you." Her breath caught. "Kaelen," "You do not have to say anything," he said. "I just wanted you to know." She looked at him, at the honesty in his face, at the kindness that had never wavered, and she felt something inside her shift again. Not all at once, not completely, but enough. Enough to make her reach out and touch his arm. Enough to let herself speak the words she had not dared to say. "I am glad I stayed." He covered her hand with his own. "So am I." They stood there together by the window, the light streaming in around them. The world outside cold but brightening, and for the first time since she had arrived, Mira felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. She felt safe. Not because the danger was gone, not because the past had been erased, but because she was no longer facing it alone, and that made all the difference. The days that followed Kaelen's public declaration brought a kind of peace Mira had not expected. The council's grumbling faded into the background. The servants grew accustomed to her presence, and Kaelen remained steady, offering her space without distance, presence without pressure. But the quiet also left room for old wounds to surface. She found herself standing before the mirror in her chamber one evening, her fingers tracing the edge of the royal crest on her shoulder. The brand was silver now, faded with time but still unmistakable. Still a mark of what she had lost. She had loved the prince, truly loved him. And when he died, that love had nowhere to go. It became a weight she carried alone, a grief no one acknowledged because the bond had never been completed. She was a promise left unfulfilled, a future erased before it could begin. And the crest, meant to protect her, had only made her a target. A reminder to the world that she had once mattered and then ceased to. She let the fabric fall back over her shoulder and turned away from the mirror. There was a knock at the door. "Mira?" Kaelen's voice was gentle. "May I come in?" She hesitated, then crossed the room and opened the door. He stood in the hallway, dressed simply, his expression open and concerned. "I thought I would check on you," he said. "You seemed distant at dinner." She stepped aside to let him enter. "I was only thinking." He closed the door quietly and moved to the chair by the fire. "May I stay? Or would you prefer to be alone?" She looked at him, at the care in his posture, the way he always offered her a choice. "You can stay," she said softly. He sat, and she took the chair across from him. The fire crackled between them, warm and steady. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Mira let out a slow breath. "I am afraid," she said. Kaelen leaned forward slightly. "Of what?" She looked down at her hands. "Of hoping again." He waited, his silence an invitation. "The crest was supposed to mean something," she continued. "It was supposed to mean I was chosen, protected, loved." Her voice wavered. "But it only brought me pain. And I cannot let myself believe that anything will be different." Kaelen's expression softened. "Mira, I know you mean well," she said quickly. "I know you have been kind, but kindness does not change the past. It does not erase the years I spent alone. It does not—" She stopped, her throat tightening. "It does not make the crest mean what it was supposed to." He rose from his chair and crossed to her, kneeling beside her so their eyes were level. "You are right," he said quietly. "I cannot change what has already happened. I cannot give you back what you lost." She felt the sting of tears but held them back. "But I can tell you this," Kaelen continued. "That mark does not define your worth. It never did." She shook her head. "Everyone sees it and thinks I am broken, that I am something discarded." "Then they are wrong," he said firmly. "You are not broken. You are not discarded." He paused, his gaze steady and warm. "You are here. You have survived. And you are more than a mark on your skin." Her breath hitched. "How can you be so certain?" "Because I see you," he said simply. "Not the crest, not the past. You." She looked at him, at the sincerity in his face, and felt something crack open inside her chest. A place she had kept sealed for so long she had forgotten it was there. "I do not know how to stop being afraid," she whispered. "You do not have to stop," Kaelen said gently. "You only have to let yourself try." He reached up slowly, his hand moving toward her shoulder. He paused, waiting for her permission. She nodded, barely. He drew the fabric aside with care, revealing the crest once more. She watched his face, bracing for pity or discomfort. But there was only tenderness. He touched the mark with his fingertips, the contact feather-light. "This does not define you," he said again. "It is a part of your story, but it is not the whole of who you are." Her eyes burned. "It is all anyone sees." "Not me," he said. "I see a woman who loved deeply, who lost everything and kept walking, who had every reason to give up but chose not to." He looked up at her, his hand still resting gently on her shoulder. "I see strength. I see grace. I see someone worth knowing." A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. "You do not have to carry this alone anymore," Kaelen said softly. "If you will let me, I will carry it with you." She closed her eyes, the warmth of his touch grounding her. "I do not know how to let someone in again." "Then we will learn together," he said. She opened her eyes and looked at him. At the man who had humiliated her in the court and then spent every day since trying to prove he was more than that mistake. At the alpha who had stood before his counsel and chosen her safety over their approval. At the one person who had not looked at her crest and seen a relic of the past. Slowly she leaned forward. He stayed still, his hand still resting on her shoulder, his eyes never leaving hers. And then, with a breath that felt like a leap, she closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question more than a declaration. But Kaelen answered it with the same gentleness, his free hand lifting to cradle her face with a tenderness that made her chest ache. When they pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. His breath was warm against her skin. "You do not have to be afraid," he whispered. "Not with me." She let herself rest there, her eyes closed, her heart trembling, but no longer silent. "I am still afraid," she admitted. "I know," he said. "But you are here anyway. And that is the bravest thing you could do." She opened her eyes and met his gaze. "What if I am not ready?" "Then we will wait," he said simply, "as long as you need." She felt the tightness in her chest ease just a little. "You would do that?" "I would do anything for you," he said. "If you would let me." She studied his face. The honesty there. The patience. The quiet devotion that had never asked for anything in return. And she felt something she had not felt in years. She felt hope. Not the reckless hope of her youth. Not the desperate hope of someone clinging to the past. But something gentler. Something steadier. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she could let herself be loved again. "I do not know if I am ready," she said softly. "But I want to try." Kaelen smiled, and it was the warmest thing she had seen in so long. "That is all I could ever ask." He rose and helped her to her feet, his hands still holding hers. "Stay with me tonight," she said quietly. Not for anything else, just stay." He nodded without hesitation. "Of course." They moved to the chairs by the fire, and he sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into his warmth, her head resting against his chest. And for the first time in years, she let herself believe that maybe the Crest did not have to define her future. Maybe she could write a new story, one where she was not a relic of the past, but a woman choosing her own path. And maybe, with Kaelen beside her, she could finally heal. The morning came gently, sunlight filtering through the tall windows in soft golden bands that warmed the stone floor. Mira woke slowly, her head still resting against Kaelen's chest, his arm wrapped around her shoulders. For a heartbeat she tensed, old instinct rising. But then she remembered where she was, and who she was with. She let herself relax again. Kaelen stirred beneath her, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning." She lifted her head and met his gaze. His hair was tousled, his expression soft and unguarded. She felt something flutter in her chest. "Good morning." He smiled, and it was such a simple thing. But it filled her with warmth. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," she admitted. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, his touch careful. "Good." They sat there for a moment longer, neither of them eager to move. But eventually Kaelen shifted, glancing toward the window. "I should go," he said quietly. "Before the hall wakes and the servants start to talk." She felt a pang of disappointment, but nodded. "I understand." He rose and offered her his hand. She took it and stood, their fingers still entwined. He hesitated, his eyes searching hers. "Will you come to the hall later? For the midday meal?" "If you want me to," she said. "I do," he said simply. "I want you there, not because of duty or obligation, but because I want to see you." She felt her throat tighten. "Then I will come." He leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "Until then." He left quietly, closing the door behind him. Mira stood there alone in the warm light, her heart still racing. She brought her hand to her chest and felt the steady beat beneath her palm. She had thought her heart had forgotten how to do this. But it was still there, still capable, still willing to try. The midday meal was a quieter affair than the grand dinners of weeks past. Kaelen had requested a smaller gathering, only those of his inner circle present. Mira entered the hall with careful steps, her gaze sweeping over the table. She saw a few familiar faces. Ilara, the healer who had tended to her when she first arrived. Marcus, the guard captain who had treated her with respect even when others had not. And Kaelen, seated at the head, his eyes already on her. He rose as she approached, pulling out the chair beside his own. "Please," he said, "sit with me." She did, her hands folded in her lap. The others greeted her kindly, and she returned their words with quiet gratitude. The meal was simple but warm. Bread and stew, honeyed apples, tea brewed with mint and lemon. Conversation flowed easily around the table, and for the first time, Mira felt included rather than observed. Kaelen spoke little, but his presence beside her was steady. Once or twice, his hand brushed hers beneath the table, a subtle touch that made her heart skip. She glanced at him and found him watching her with a softness that made her breath catch. When the meal ended and the others began to rise, Kaelen turned to her. "Will you walk with me?" She nodded. "I would like that." They left the hall together, stepping into the gardens that bordered the east wing. The air was cool, the sky pale and streaked with thin clouds. They walked side by side in silence for a time, their steps slow and unhurried. Finally, Kaelen spoke. "There is something I need to say to you." She looked at him, her pulse quickening. "What is it?" He stopped and turned to face her, his expression serious, but not cold. "When I first brought you here, it was because I did not know what else to do. I saw someone in need, and I acted. but I did not know it would become this. She waited, her chest tight. I do not want you to stay because you feel you have no other choice, he continued. I do not want you here out of obligation, or because of the crest you carry or the past you cannot escape. I want you to stay because you choose to. Because you want to be here. With me. Her throat ached with the honesty of his words. And if I choose to leave? His jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Then I will let you go. I will give you whatever you need. Coin, protection, a horse, safe passage, anything. But it will be your choice, not mine. She looked down at her hands. You would truly let me go? I would, he said quietly, because loving you means wanting you to be free, not bound by ghosts or guilt or the weight of the past. Free to choose your own life. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She lifted her gaze to his. I thought I would never want to stay anywhere again. I thought I would always be running, always looking back. And now? He asked softly. She took a breath. Now I think, maybe I have been afraid of the wrong thing. He waited, his eyes never leaving hers. I was afraid of losing someone again, she said, afraid of letting someone in and then watching them disappear. But maybe the real fear is never letting anyone in at all, never giving myself the chance to love again. Kaelen stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. You do not have to decide everything today. You do not have to be certain. Just stay. One more day, one more week. As long as you need. She squeezed his hand, her heart beating hard. What if I am still afraid? Then I will be afraid with you, he said, and we will figure it out together. She felt something break open inside her, something old and brittle that had been holding her together for so long. And beneath it, something new, something tender and fragile but alive. I want to stay, she whispered, not because I have nowhere else to go, but because I want to be here, with you. His smile was slow and radiant. Then stay. She nodded, her vision blurring. I will. He pulled her gently into his arms, and she let herself be held. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. It was strong, reliable, real. And for the first time in so long, she felt safe. That evening they sat together in the small sitting room again, the fire crackling softly between them. Kaelen poured tea and handed her a cup, and she took it with both hands, the warmth sinking into her palms. They did not speak for a long time. They did not need to. The silence between them was no longer heavy with fear or uncertainty. It was peaceful, comfortable. Finally, Kaelen set his cup aside and looked at her. I want to build something with you, he said. Not a kingdom or a legacy, just a life. A quiet, simple life where we can be ourselves. She met his gaze, her eyes soft. I think I would like that. He reached for her hand and laced his fingers through hers. It will not be easy. There will be days when the past rises up again, days when the fear comes back. I know, she said. But I will be here, he promised. Every day, every night, for as long as you want me. She leaned forward and kissed him, slow and tender. When she pulled back, she rested her forehead against his. I want you, she whispered. Not just today, but tomorrow, and the day after that. "Then you have me," he said. And in that quiet room, with the fire burning low and the night settling around them, Mira let herself believe it. She let herself believe that healing was possible, that love could be rebuilt, that the crest on her shoulder did not have to be the end of her story, but the beginning of something new, something chosen, something hers.